The lighting in here is not the best, but we're just gonna work with it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to go over my December TBR because it is almost December as we speak, and I'm going to have a November wrap-up coming out soon, but I just wanted to go over the books that I am hoping to read in December because I have quite the stack here, and all of these are for a upcoming project that I need to just really push and get done. So there's like 12 books here. I hope I can read them all in December. If not, it might bleed into January a bit. But yeah, these are all short story collections, and some of them are books that I recently picked up either online or when I was in Florida on my trip, which, side note, was really fun to go into like local independent bookstores in that area and see how different they are from the New York ones. So that was pretty cool. So I have like 12-ish books here. Hopefully I can read them all in December, but without further ado, let's get into my December TBR. Okay, as I said, these are all short story collections, so I will do my best to give a general explanation of the book and why I'm interested in it, etc., but being short story collections, it is hard to kind of give like a overview of what they are without having read them because the descriptions are vague on purpose. So I don't even always know what I'm getting myself into with a short story collection. So I'm just going to go over what I am planning on reading, and when I do read these, I'm sure I will be able to tell you a lot more about what they're about. So I'm going to stop stalling and get started with sharing my TBR with you. So anyway, the first one is Rag by Maurice Meyer, and the back says that it focuses on the black heart of intimacies of all kinds and the ways in which isolated people's yearning for community can breed violence, danger, and madness. So it sounds really interesting and dark and weird. There is a book that came before this, I believe, but I found this at a used bookshop, so I just picked this one up for like $5. But there's a book that precedes this that's called Heartbreaker, which reinvents sexual and romantic taboos, which also sounds up my alley. So if I like this, I might have to pick up the book that preceded it and read that. This cover is super interesting. It's like a really stretched out, weird looking face. So I really like that. But yeah, I couldn't pass this one up. It's a short story collection that I found for $5 at a used bookstore, so of course I picked it up. And I think it sounds literary and interesting and perfect for my writing project that's coming up, so excited to give this one a read. Also, these are in no particular order, that's just the order that I have them stacked up. This one is Flowers of Mold by Ha Seong-nan. This is a Korean translated collection of short stories, which is kind of bridging on horror and is very unnerving and unsettling. It says that Flowers of Mold presents a range of ordinary individuals, male and female, young and old, who have found themselves left behind by an increasingly urbanized and fragmented world. So this sounds like it's going to have a lot of social commentary on Korea through the lens of these kind of horror, weird stories. And again, this cover is so interesting and beautiful. Why is it not focusing? There we go. This cover is really, really cool. There's like some really interesting plants, and I just think it's going to be great. I hope that it lives up to all of the hype that I've kind of set out for it because of the cover, and it seems really cool. The only thing that I'm like a little bit concerned about is that it's a pretty like big paperback and the text is quite small, so it's probably going to take me a bit to get through. But either way, sounds really interesting, and I'm definitely going to be reading that in December. Next up, I have a Indonesian translated work, and it is Apple and Knife by Intan Parmaditha. I'm going to try my best to say these correctly. Please leave it in the comments if I said it wrong, or if you know how to pronounce these names, let me know, because some of these I can't even find pronunciation guides online, though I did look all of them up, so I'm doing my best. But this one is basically a feminist horror take on myths and fairy tales, specific to Indonesia, I believe. So on the back it says, these stories reveal a soupy other world stewing just beneath the surface of corporate boardrooms, shanty towns, etc. This is subversive feminist horror at its best, where men and women alike are arbiters of fear, and where revenge is sometimes sweetest when delivered from the grave. So it sounds pretty creepy and weird and feminist, and I think it'll be a perfect addition to my writing project. So looking forward to reading this one. Cover is very strange. There was another cover for this book that I liked better, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so this is what I ended up with. But yeah, very excited for that. Next up, this is kind of a funny story because I picked up these two books separately at different times in different places without realizing that it was the same author. I just thought that they were just two Danish translated books. Turns out that it is the same author, and I only just realized that yesterday when I was pulling all of these books off my shelves for this video. So the author is Dorothy Nors, and these are, like I said, Danish translated works. They're both short story collections. This is Wild Swims, and this one is Karate Chop. And I found this in a used bookshop for $12, and that's not too bad until you realize that one of these pages was really badly folded, and there's also like a drawing of an eye in the back. So I'm kind of mad that I spent $12 on this. Oh well. But I found this one at a used bookstore, and then this one I just found from doing some research on translated short story collections and bought it online. Didn't realize it was the same author at all. There's like not a lot of continuity between the two covers. Not that you have to like use the same cover design, but I kind of expect authors to have like similar cover design, so I really didn't pick it out. So Wild Swims says that it plumbs the depths of the human heart from desire to melancholy and what lies between. So sounds vague. It says 14 effervescent stories follow men and women full of restless longing, seeking home but rarely finding it. So it sounds sort of similar to the concept of Mothers by Chris Power, which was a short story collection about like travel and family and all of those kind of themes. So this sounds somewhat similar to that, but this one's translated. And for Karate Chop, there really isn't much on the back of this in terms of what the stories are about, but I remember it just being a feminist kind of short story collection. Again, the backs are usually pretty vague, but it does seem pretty different thematically from Wild Swims. So I'm likely going to read both of these and pick which one I want to use in the project. I doubt that I'm going to use both, so we'll see what I like better. And if I'm really on a time crunch, I might just choose whichever one sounds more interesting at the time. We'll see. But ideally, I would like to read both. It was just really funny that I didn't realize that it was the same author. So look at that. Okay, moving on to a book that I said I was going to read in October and didn't, and that is The House Guest by Amparo de Villa. This is a Spanish translated book, so I've heard that this book is very Shirley Jackson-esque. It says, like those of Kafka, Poe, and Shirley Jackson, these stories are terrifying, mesmerizing, and expertly crafted. You'll finish each one gasping for air. That's very exciting. With acute psychological insight, de Villa follows her characters to the limits of desire, paranoia, isolation, and fear. So this sounds pretty creepy and weird and kind of slightly similar to Things We Lost in the Fire. Maybe, we'll see. I just like reading sort of Shirley Jackson adjacent literature and stuff that feels Jackson-esque. So I think this will be really interesting, and I think a lot of these short story collections are actually going to end up being kind of horror or like myth, creepy related stuff, which I'm kind of okay with. I think that'll work really well. So The House Guest, I also think this cover is really interesting. So looking forward to reading this one. But moving right along, we have a collection called False Bingo by Jack Jemk. So recently I read The Grip of It, also by this author, which was a haunted house kind of novel in the Shirley Jackson adjacent camp. So on the back, this one says that in False Bingo, we watch as sinister forces, some supernatural, some on this earth, some real and some not, work their way into the mundanity of everyday life. So it kind of briefly goes over what each story covers. It says, fueled by paranoia and visceral suspense and crafted with masterful restraint, these 20 stories explore what happens when our fears become real, if only for a fleeting moment. Okay, moving out of the horror genre for short stories, we have a book that Noel Gallagher recommended a while ago that I wanted to read in the summer, I believe, and just didn't get to. And that is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Disha Filia. So this one is really about the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their desires and pursue a momentary reprieve from being good. So this is sort of about the intersection between being Black, being a woman, and being a Christian, or, you know, being part of the church or not being part of the church, and religion in general. So it's really about all of those intersections and how each one relates to each other in different ways, from what I understand. And that intersection is something that I find fascinating and am really, really excited to read more about. I think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to feel pretty realistic and very different from like the other collections that I've held up that are very much like in the realm of the bizarre and horror and supernatural. And I think this one is going to feel very grounded and feel really realistic. This sounds really, really interesting, and it's a book that I wanted to read for quite a while. So I'm definitely going to get that read. That is like high priority. Moving right along, I have a book that I picked up in Florida, and it is A House is a Body by Shruti Swami. I love this cover. This cover is absolutely gorgeous. So the back of this one says, dreams collide with reality, modernity with antiquity, and myth with identity in the 12 arresting stories of A House is a Body. Set in the United States and India, Swami's characters grapple with motherhood, relationships, and their bodies. So this sounds right up my alley. Discussions of motherhood, womanhood, the body, etc. Just sounds like an all-around 5-star read for me. I hope that I love this as much as I expect to. I really haven't seen this one before, and I just picked it up at a bookshop, and I was like, that sounds amazing, perfect, right up my alley. So I picked it up, and yeah, it's probably going to be my next read after I finish the short story collection that I'm currently reading. This is probably the one I'm going to pick up next, just because I'm so excited for it. So yeah. All right, moving right along, I have Tunneling to the Center of the Earth by Kevin Wilson. So this is by the same author who wrote Nothing to See Here, which is the story about the twins that spontaneously combust. It's all over the internet. I haven't read it yet. I do own it, which is kind of silly that I bought like another Kevin Wilson book without reading the one I already currently own. Whatever, it's fine. But this just sounded like a really interesting short story collection. Also loved the cover to this one. It's just so cute. It's got deckled edges. It's got French flaps. Like it's the package deal, you know? Like this was low-key a cover buy. It's okay. So the inside flap says, Kevin Wilson's characters inhabit a world that moves seamlessly between the real and the imagined, the mundane and the fantastic. Southern Gothic at its best, laced with humor and pathos, these wonderfully inventive stories explore the relationship between love and death and the many ways we try to cope with both. Again, very vague. It's a short story collection. It's going to be vague. I think this one will be more humorous and more, not necessarily light, but more like fantastical, similar to what I've heard about Nothing to See Here. So I imagine this will be a nice reprieve from some of the darker short story collections that I have in this stack for December, and I think it'll be a fun time. So yeah. I'm finding that it's really difficult to talk about books you haven't read, especially short story collections. It's kind of similar to a book haul where you're like, I got it, I want to read it, I don't know what else to say, so I'm doing my best. But it's kind of hard to just be like, this is a collection of short stories. I don't know what they're about because I haven't read them. I'm gonna read it. All right, my second to last read for December is going to be Cosmogony by Lucy Ives. So I saw this a couple of times out in the world. I saw it at the library, I saw it at a couple of different bookshops, and finally I was out at a bookshop with my aunt and I picked it up. The cover is really, really interesting as well. I think short story collections often have beautiful covers, and they should, because without any like concrete description of what it's about, you kind of need to be drawn in by the cover, which is why I have so many short story collections, because they just draw me in with those covers, and I'm like, I don't know what this is about, but I'm intrigued, so I buy them. So the back of this one says, Cosmogony takes accounts of so-called normal life and mines them for inconsistencies, deceptions, and delights. These stories reveal how the narratives we tell ourselves and believe are inevitably constructed, offering a glimpse of the structures that underlie and apparently determine human existence. I like how the spine is like blue and like sky-ish, and then the cover is completely different. It's kind of interesting because you see a blue spine on a bookshelf and you think it's going to be a blue book, and then all of a sudden, pow, you got orange. So it can be a little bit arresting, but this sounds pretty pretentious and interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. And then finally, I have a short story collection that was 100% a cover buy that I just found in a bookshop months ago, and that is Girls of a Certain Age by Maria Adelman. So this is a collection about womanhood and different aspects of that. So the inside flap says, finding themselves in various kinds of disempowering, frightening, or otherwise unendurable circumstances, the girls and women in Maria Adelman's stories look for ways to free themselves into new lives, or at the very least, new states of feelings. So it sounds like kind of an exploration of how women deal with their circumstances, and it sounds right up my alley and sounds really super, super interesting. So that is the end of the very, very long TBR for December. I don't know how I'm possibly going to get all of these read, but I'm going to do my best. This is a thick stack, wow. But the plan is to leave them out and put them like up there just in a stack so that I am motivated to read them, because I think if they're just all out and not where they're supposed to be, it will motivate me enough to like keep picking them up and wanting to put them back in their spot. That probably sounds ridiculous, but I'm like really on top of making sure that my books are put away and that everything looks nice in my, bookshelf area. So if these books are just stacked up separately, and I get that that's literally why everyone has a TBR shelf, but don't come for me. I think it'll motivate me to get them read. So that's the plan. We shall see if I finish all of these. Wish me luck. Also, let me know what you're planning on reading in December. I would love to chat with you about that. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.